Frost with Resilient Ecosystems. We're driving the Kids Up Resiliency Project. And today is going to be a little different than the last couple of episodes. I have got a guest on to talk about what is human nature. And I've known Dr. Silverstein for about 30 years. He was the maid of honor at my wedding many years ago, and he is a forensic anthropologist. And when I originally asked him what that was many years ago, he says he's the guy who gets blood out of a stone. So, with that, let me introduce Jay and let's talk about human nature.
Hi, Mark. Yeah,
Hello.
thank you for inviting me here. It's been a while. You were just saying that we hadn't talked since I was in Russia before the war.
Right. Not only
So
Russia, but Siberia.
yes, of course, but Western Siberia to
Yeah.
be fair.
So to clarify a little bit, Dr. Silverstein was trapped in Russia during COVID and was stuck in Siberia teaching anthropology for 2 years and a
Yeah,
bit
yeah. In 2019 to till till the
till
war, basically. Yeah,
till about and he got out before the Ukraine war, and now he's in Nottingham, England. And yes, we already did the joke about having him say hi to the sheriff, and then he tells me that he actually trains people for the Nottingham Police Department, which made it even better. Um, and you are leaving for Egypt next week for a few
I
months.
am to continue my research. My last decade of research in Egypt will be continuing on. So
Okay, so since this is a short program, can you tell us give like a 1 minute bio about what you do? Because I talked about the blood and the stone, but I know you've been all over the world. I followed your pictures and your Facebook. So
yeah, so I worked with the U.S. government, with the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, and many iterations before that for about 17 years. Then I went to work in a experimental university school in Russia that was trying to increase the level of academics, and particularly in the liberal arts. And uh, uh, you know, my work there got sort of circumscribed a little bit by the COVID pandemic, where I was teaching from my apartment for a lot of the time I was there. Plus, I still had been doing my research in Egypt in 2019 until COVID shut that down also. And then I had left to do research when the war started, and I simply told the university that I won't be coming back until the war's over. And then I found a very nice position here, very supportive of my research, very in line with my experience and my education as a forensic bioarchaeologist here as a senior lecturer at the Nottingham Trent University. And so here I am. Before that, way back when we used to hang out. I was a police officer in
mhm.
California. So I've done a lot of different things in my life. Working for the government, when I was searching for MIAs, I did travel around the world. I've worked in places like Papua New Guinea and North Korea and Kiribati and many more. So
And some South American work, if I remember correctly.
Mesoamerican. So
Yeah.
my doctoral research was looking at militarism in Mesoamerica, and then I also did work in Guatemala at Tikal before I switched over to Egypt. I got seduced by the Egyptian side.
It hard not to be. I mean, for any of us who have read any of the Victorian sagas about archaeologists and what was it, the Amelia Peabody books on it and everything. Yeah, it's hard not to. I mean, the whole Victorian England love of Victorian. It's almost like the American love of England and the English.
Yeah. Yeah, for me,
So
it was the archaeological challenge that I was offered an opportunity to excavate an entire city where, that would be my archaeological site is over a kilometer in diameter, a city of, major importance. And we've made so many major discoveries there. Uh, you know, many associated with warfare as as my background kind of made me attuned to detect the evidence when it was there. So yeah, so but it really is a passion and the Egyptians are wonderful people to work with. Um, the growth of science over the last 10 years of Egyptian researchers has been amazing. So the
Awesome.
colleagues and the camaraderie is amazing.
That's awesome. So, to switch to the primary subject we we're talking about, you've written several papers on the idea of neo Darwinism. God, I just totally tortured that. And we want to talk about, we hear a lot about what human nature is, that humans are violent, that humans are competitive, that humans that defines us, that we're defined by fight and flight, and that, while that's, in my opinion, is part of what media uses to control us through fear mongering. I don't think that is definitive of what humans are. And out of all the people I know and have met in my life, you are probably the best educated and to represent and experienced to represent what human nature is. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, maybe you need to get out and meet more people is one thing,
Yeah, there is that too.
but I'll take the compliment also. So, yeah, my first interest in grad school on evolution developed because I was in a very strong sociobiological anthropology program, and altruism, of course, was considered sort of the antithesis of natural selection and Darwinian principles. So it contradicted the idea with people willing to sacrifice. So therefore, they were very set on trying to find rationales for altruism that made them, at least gene serving, if not self-serving. So, uh, but it wasn't consonant just with my own understanding of humanity, having been a police officer for 10 years before that, and having dealt with humans and understanding the compassion, the sacrifice that we're willing to do for each other, and that other animals are willing to do, and that we're willing to do for other animals. That it really doesn't fit within this Darwinian construct. And I began to look deeper and deeper into it, and recognizing that social evolution and biological evolution, which sociobiology and evolutionary psychology tends to try to bring together by understanding it within Darwinian framework, wasn't working. And so I began to look at the parameters of Darwinian evolution and realized that there were times that it didn't work. Some of the basic structures of his theory simply do not apply to humans. And actually, Alfred Wallace, who came up with the theory, just about the same time as Darwin, and corresponded with Darwin, and they had some debates about the nature of humanity and the nature of natural selection, and they disagreed on it. Darwin, of course, won in that debate, but uh, then it becomes, well, why do we behave this way? Why are what makes us human? What allows us to evolve, and what is that path to the future that we're treading down? And I think from talking to you and knowing a little bit about your philosophy and your teaching, that we kind of have the same idea, even if we come up from a little bit different direction. And it's that the theory of evolution, as we tend to think of it, is not really consonant with our nature. And we've embedded Darwinism so much into society; it's become a rationale. Sometimes identified malignantly as social Darwinism, eugenics, and things like this. But we don't really have an alternative to it. And I think that's where you're trying to push society, is towards
Mhm.
that alternative. And so, on that basic thing of do we have these impulses of violence, of being a predator, of being sexual monsters, whatever it might be, that we have these ideas embedded within us. And in that sense, evolutionary psychology and sociobiology make a lot of sense. But we have just as much, or more even, of the ideas of cooperation, of nurturing, of raising our young, of protecting the vulnerable, that these are all embedded with us as well. But we can even move beyond that when we start to think about what we've become as we've become these intellectual, semi-rational beings. and that we have control of so much information and knowledge that we can actually logically look at the world and think how to make a better world, and recognize that we have the capability to make that better world. And so now we start to look at then the structural elements of society, which is what I think, again, that you focus on.
Mm-hmm.
What are the structures within our society that are stopping us from making that better world? And of course, we've embedded it in capitalism, which is very much an evolutionary sort of structure, right? And Adam Smith's writing on capitalism probably influenced Darwin a little bit. These types of structures that we feel like there is always going to be it's a zero-sum game, and there's going to be winners and losers, and our goal is to be the winner, and that's Darwinian. But those structures don't have to be. We have complete control over that, and we simply need to have the philosophical will and the moral will to say, well, what would the ideal world be like? And if you ask any human being, they would all have pretty close to the same, and any normal, non-sociopath human being. Unfortunately, the ones in power seem to be more towards the sociopath end these days, but and that's happened periodically throughout history. But that what would the ideal world look like? And we probably have a pretty similar vision of what we would like to see in the world. So the only thing stopping us, is ourselves and the structures that we have, and we need to start to move towards restructuring both our education, our political structure, our economic structure. All these things need to be restructured to encourage that world that we would all, in theory, like to see.
Yeah, and so that goes back to our pre-show discussion where our organization tends to think of our culture not so much as a bunch of drummers or whatever government structures culture as, but culture is a social contract, a structural framework, and artificial intelligence for all that. That is the education, the capitalism, all of the things that keep us basically enthralled to a system that doesn't allow us to vision that new world and or to act toward getting that world. And we put all of our faith and our trust into people who it is not in their best interest, as far as they see their best interest, sociopath or not, to help us achieve a better world because it does not personally benefit them. So our model is to get people to learn how to work together at the very small level and expand on that in a grassroots fashion until we're reprogramming that AI to better support our humanity.
Yeah, we do use an analogy, perhaps, is machine learning.
Yeah.
Is that we've developed a machine, we've created a machine, we've convinced ourselves that this is the best machine we can come up with, and we just go through iterations of that machine, and the progress that we do make, and even though it goes back and forth, as we see right now, we're in kind of a regressive sort of phase in the United States, but I think the backlash will move us forward again on lots of things that will improve the human condition. So I mean, it does work, but we can work faster, and in some cases we have to when we recognize the damage that we're doing to our environment. For instance, we don't have the time to allow that to keep going the way it's gone. Already the consequences of global warming will cost millions of lives and destroy economies and entire cultural systems that have been around for thousands, tens of thousands of years.
Just as a side note, when we were doing the Clean Technology Trade Alliance, a group called the International Humanitarian Services, or IHS, brought the story of Chihuahua, Mexico to us, where they had lost 85% of their agriculture due to desertification caused by climate change over the last 2 decades. So it's real. And they had an outmigration from the Copper Canyon, which is where the agriculture was, of over 100,000 people to Juarez, which created a crime situation in Juarez that the entire world knows about.
Yeah, well, everything's connected. And so, it's funny that the same people who might complain about illegal immigration will be the same people who are, resisting us taking action to fix the damage we're doing to the climate. Yet the climate is going to be one of the biggest causes of mass migrations.
Yep.
and it already is.
Yeah.
And
Climate migration is the thing that everybody on the planet is going to face, and we better start acknowledging that.
yeah, so that interconnectivity is one of the, we look for simple solutions. That has been one of the great weaknesses of us, and evolution kind of selected for that in a sense, is for us to be that way, because evolution is very immediate, right? You survive in a minute or you don't survive.
Yep.
But once we develop our brains, and once we develop the increasing complexity of our ability to control information, use that information to shape the universe the way we want to, that we've made things that were impossible to exist. If you go back, 100 years or 1,000 years or a million years, new things have come into existence in the universe because of our creativity. And
Absolutely.
if you recognize that, then you recognize that the limitation is our imagination.
Yep.
And so we
And
need people to start imagining a better world so we can start creating it.
and I couldn't agree more. We are at 16 minutes, so I'm going to finish with one brief story that I don't know if you remember. But when we were living in San Jose, and Jay was a police officer at that point, and we were driving from his house. I don't remember where we were going, but I made a turn, and Jay was right behind me, and I made a turn. The light turned orange while I was in the intersection, and the minute I pulled over, I got pulled over by a police officer, um, and was being given a ticket for running a red light. And Jay pulled up right behind the police officer and stepped out and said, "So what's the ticket for?" And the police officer said, "Well, he ran a red light." And Jay said, "No, he didn't. I was right behind him, and it turned orange while he was in the intersection. It's the only ticket I've ever beaten in court."
I don't remember that, but good on me.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't show up because he figured that there was no point.
Oh.
So yeah, so I managed to beat that ticket, and I just wanted to share that one anecdote about the time that we've known each other, because I remember that one forever, because it's literally the only ticket I have ever beaten in court.
Yeah. I've got one in England now for driving on the wrong side of or driving on the
Oops.
bus, actually, not the wrong side of the road, but driving in
Yeah.
a bus lane.
All right. Um,
But
thank you for the time today. And when you're back from Egypt, very much like to bring you on to Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces, which is the main podcast that we do, if you'd
yeah,
be
it'd be a
willing to do
pleasure.
that. All
Yeah, of
right.
course, Mark. Yeah. All right.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care.
Thank
And
you for the invitation.
yep. And thank you for the time. I think this will enlighten a lot of people. And I'm looking forward to having a more in depth discussion with Marwan and you about human nature and social structures.
Maybe a good debate program.
And that's exactly what it is. It's basically kind of an open and very respectful debate.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks. Take
Thank you.
care.